Hello everybody and welcome back to Screen Stars. Well, it is now the month of June and I thought I would do something a little bit different, even though I did do this last year. And I'm going to give you, as you know, I do like my top 10 lists. Well, I'm going to give you a top 5 list of my 5 favourite films so far in the year of 2019, my least favourite film so far of this year, and my top 5 most disappointing films of the year. It's been a pretty good year so far. There's probably a couple you can think already that might make those lists, but there might be a couple here that might surprise you. But I would love to know in the comments what your top 5 best, worst and most disappointing films of 2019 are so far. So I do hope you find this list enjoyable, and please do comment. I do enjoy it when you comment and let me know what your favourites are as well. So we will start with my top 5 most disappointing films of 2019, and I'm starting at number 5 with a film called The Headhunter. Now this wasn't a big box office film or anything, but it was a film that when you read the synopsis on it and stuff, it sounded fantastic, about this guy that goes out and hunts beasts and monsters, these mythical beasts and monsters, and slices them up and things like that. But what you actually got was pretty much a bore fest. Very disappointing film. At number 4, I am putting I Trapped the Devil as one of my most disappointing films of the year. Great concept, but however it just failed to deliver. It was reasonably tense, but it was more like an indie drama than a horror, and I just found it a little bit dull. It dragged a little bit, and after watching the trailer several months ago for this film, it promised to deliver a far scarier film than it actually was. The third most disappointing film is the Liam Neeson film Cold Pursuit. I'm usually fairly forgiving of Liam Neeson action films. They're usually fairly enjoyable, and while I didn't dislike this film intensely or anything, it's a bit of a letdown. I remember enjoying the trailer. I thought it looked like a good mix of comedy and action, which was unusual for a Liam Neeson film, but the comedy didn't work, the action wasn't very good, and it was pretty generic characters all the way through, so a bit of a letdown really. The second most disappointing film for me, almost made my top 5 worst, this one, Captive State. It's just dull as dishwater, this film. It's an alien occupation film that is like watching paint dry. I genuinely found this film incredibly boring and dull, with dull characters, nobody to root for, and the only saving grace was some of the effects were pretty impressive, but definitely very disappointed with this. And my number 1 most disappointing film of the year has to be Pet Sematary. We were all hoping for a really terrifying horror film, and what we got was very middle of the road, bog standard horror film that added nothing to the original apart from a couple of changes, and it just wasn't that good, with pretty dull performances, not overly scary, and the only good thing about the film was John Lithgow, who was very watchable as usual, but the film itself wasn't. My top 5 worst films of the year. Number 5 is Soul Hunters, a film that I'm not going to go into depth about the story because you'll never watch it, and I don't suggest you ever watch this film. It's one of those low budget horror sci-fi things that's packed full of martial arts for no reason, with guys doing jobs for devils and people getting betrayed, and terrible effects, terrible acting, and it is definitely one to avoid. Number 4 worst film of the year is Backtrace. Sylvester Stallone and Matthew Modine in a terribly average action thriller that offers nothing new. Stallone's barely in it. Moronic choices take place. Dull and uninspired action scenes. And you just watch Matthew Modine having migraines throughout the film, which ends up giving you one by the end. One to avoid. The third worst film of the year has to be Serenity. Matthew McConaughey, Anne Hathaway, a very good cast, an incredibly dull film. It's like this weird sci-fi drama that isn't engaging at all, with terribly written characters. I've no idea why they agreed to do this film. I genuinely don't. I do not suggest you watch it. It's awful. second worst film is Welcome to Acapulco, an action comedy that has probably got the most annoying lead I've ever experienced in a film of this sort. It's got this awful narration throughout it that makes you want to dive in the screen and beat the crap out of the lead character, and it is just awful to watch. It's not funny and the action's terrible as well, so seriously avoid this one, guys. And so far my worst film of the year, I've only just recently reviewed this, is The Poison Rose. John Travolta, Morgan Freeman, like a modern film noir that is about as interesting as watching wallpaper paste dry. It is awfully done. It's terribly old-fashioned, terribly dull, phoned in performances by everybody, and one of the most uninteresting, boring films I've watched in a long time. Now on to the good stuff, my top 5 favourite films of the year, and coming in at number 5 is Glass, a film that got a little bit of stick when it was released, but I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it at the cinema. I've just recently got it on Blu-ray and watched it again. I arguably enjoyed it even more the second time round. Brilliant film, ties the trilogy off perfectly. Did it give me the ending I wanted? Probably not, but it made sense in the grand scheme of things, and I thoroughly enjoyed this film. Number 4, Fighting with My Family. Who expected this to be so good? Brilliantly made film, a really good feel-good film, one of the best feel-good films I've watched in a long time. It's funny, it's got great characters in it, and it's about the real-time wrestler Paige, who made her way in WWE and made a name for herself, but it is done with such charm and emotion and believability. It's highly watchable, highly entertaining, lots of fun, and one I definitely loved. Number 3, Stan and Ollie. Unbelievably a film that nobody saw at the cinema at all, and it is a beautifully made film with two of the best performances, or certainly some of the best performances I've seen this year by far, by the two leads in this film, Steve Coogan, and it's just wonderful. Please go and watch Stan and Ollie. Number 2, John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum. Watched this just a couple of weeks ago when it was released. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was better than the second one personally. I really enjoyed the action. It was inventive, it was fun, it kept you thoroughly entertained throughout, and I'm very much looking forward to the 4th John Wick. So hugely enjoyable film. And coming in at number 1, it can be of no surprise, I gave it a 10 out of 10, Avengers Endgame. I feel as though this film ended this stage of the Marvel Universe brilliantly. It was everything I hoped for and more. It was emotional, it was exciting, it made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, it made me feel like a kid. It felt to me like a perfect cinema experience, so definitely number 1. So there you go, guys. Those are my top 5 best, worst and most disappointing films so far in 2019. I think you'll agree, certainly on the best ones, there's some, if you've seen them, there's some really good films there. There were a number of other films as well that were in consideration, but they may potentially make my top 10 list, depending on what comes out for the rest of the year, because there's a lot of films I'm looking forward to. And so it goes with the other films as well, my worst films and most disappointing films. Definitely on the worst one, guys, there's a lot of films to avoid there. Truly awful stuff going on with those films, so do not watch any of them if you can at all help it. So thank you very much for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this middle of the year catch up. We've got another 6 months to go, so fingers crossed that we're going to get some brilliant films going forward for the rest of the year. So thanks for watching.